All right, so you've thrown down the gauntlet, asking us to condense millennia of world history, all based on history of the entire world. Ambitious, to say the least.
Quite the challenge, yeah. But that's what deep dives are for, right?
Yeah.
Sifting through this video to extract the most fascinating nuggets for everyone.
It's like, how do you distill the essence of human history from those first steps to the moments that reshaped everything? Wild.
And every origin story, at least when it comes to us, has to start with, well, where we came from, early human evolution. It's a long way to go to get to iPhones.
It really is mind-boggling. Thinking back millions of years, our primate ancestors were just starting to diverge, and now here we are. It's humbling when you think of all those stages: Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus.
And each stage, it wasn't just cosmetic, it was crucial. Think about the aridity and savanna hypotheses, right? They're suggesting that the climate, the very landscape, shifted dramatically. Grasslands expanding, maybe forcing our ancestors to, well, adapt or perish.
It really makes you appreciate how resilient and adaptable we are as a species.
Right. Bipedalism, walking upright, that wasn't just a neat trick. Freed up our hands for tool use. And with those bigger brains, even if they meant a longer childhood, more vulnerability, it set the stage for, well, us, domination. Sometimes the smallest changes, they echo through time.
Talk about leaving your mark. The video, it then jumps to the Paleolithic era, right? And that's the vast majority of human existence before we started writing things down. Small nomadic tribes, just trying to survive, following food, seeking shelter.
Easy to romanticize, but don't forget, this is when humans mastered fire. I mean, imagine that impact. Warmth, protection, cooked food.
It's no surprise that fire, it pops up in myths, in spirituality, across cultures.
Exactly. More than just a tool, it becomes a symbol of human ingenuity, of controlling the world around us.
Which brings us to about 12,000 years ago, the Neolithic Revolution. Farming. Everything changes. Domesticated plants and animals, settlements. But it's so interesting how this wasn't just an overnight thing. It unfolded over centuries, right? Different places, different paces.
And like any revolution, not everyone wins. Agriculture, it leads to population booms. Yeah, societies get more complex, but you also get inequality and new kinds of conflicts.
Progress. It's not always a straight line, is it? More like a jungle gym.
Exactly. Messy, with consequences no one anticipates. Like, sure, more food, but maybe less variety in our diets, right? New health issues pop up.
It's true. But with agriculture, then come these civilizations. A video, it starts us off in Mesopotamia, land between the Tigris and Euphrates, the cradle of civilization, they call it.
And for good reason. This is where writing pops up. Monumental buildings, intricate societies. Hammurabi's Code, for example. It's almost 4,000 years old, but they had laws about contracts, divorce, even minimum wage.
Shows you some things never really change.
Yeah.
We crave order, rules to live by. And speaking of ancient times, you can't forget Egypt.
Masters of engineering, mathematics, art, you name it. The pyramids, those temples, they're still here. But it wasn't all massive monuments. They had irrigation systems down to a science. The Nile, it was lifeblood. They were adaptable, resourceful.
Incredible what they achieved. But the video, it didn't just stick to the big names, which was great. We even got a glimpse into the Indus Valley civilization. And they were doing things like urban planning, sanitation, even dentistry.
It's like, whoa, hold on. Innovation wasn't just in one corner of the world. Those Indus cities, they had drainage systems that put some modern places to shame, public baths, a real understanding of hygiene, city life.
We can learn a thing or two from them even today. And speaking of innovation, ancient China.
China. Dynasties upon dynasties. Bronze Age, you've got the Shang, the Zhou. Their bronze work was off the charts. Developed writing systems, and those philosophical beliefs, Confucianism, still resonate today.
It's amazing how these ideas, they just endure. But China, you can't talk about it without the Silk Road. This network of trade routes, it's legendary, connecting East and West for centuries.
And it wasn't just goods, right? Ideas traveled that road. Technologies, cultures mixing. The world, even back then, it was more connected than we sometimes realize. And speaking of connections, the video, it made sure to highlight the Americas. Before Europe showed up, it wasn't just empty land, not at all.
Absolutely. The Olmec, the Maya, the Norte Chico, these were impressive cultures in their own right. Cities, complex calendars, they were making strides in astronomy, mathematics, all independently from what was happening over in Eurasia. It really makes you realize, that there's this whole narrative we often get, and it's just incomplete.
Exactly. Every part of the world, it's got its own story to tell, its own thread in this big tapestry of, well, us humans.
And speaking of stories, right, the video, it moves us into the Middle Ages. Now, that's a period that gets painted as this, I don't know, dark age a lot, but the video makes it clear. It wasn't that simple.
Not even close. Dark Ages, that's doing a lot of heavy lifting. This was a time of huge shifts. Cultures mixing, new powers rising, Christianity spreading, Islam emerges, and you get these new ways of structuring society, like feudalism.
Feudalism. It's funny. It always makes me picture knights and castles first. But that system, how it shaped medieval life, those bonds of loyalty, obligation, it's fascinating.
Oh, and let's not forget those Vikings, right? Sailing out of Scandinavia, and yeah, they raided, but they were traders too, explorers, settling across Europe, even the Atlantic. They got around.
Talk about wanderlust. But the Middle Ages, it wasn't all like castles and conquests. The video, it hits on the Black Death too. That pandemic sweeping through Europe and Asia in the 14th century, devastating.
Imagine that a third of Europe's population just gone. And that's not even counting Asia. It's horrific. But here's the thing. That huge loss of life, it actually gave peasants more leverage. They could demand better conditions, and that ripples out, seeds of social change centuries later.
It really puts things in perspective. Life's fragile, but even in those dark times, these unexpected consequences, they echo through history.
Speaking of echoes, the video takes us from there right into the Renaissance. After the Middle Ages, you get this burst of everything, art, science, intellectual life, it explodes.
Like a collective awakening, right?
Yeah.
Rediscovering those classical ideas, this hunger for new discoveries. And it's no coincidence that the Renaissance, it happens alongside the Age of Exploration.
Exactly. Europeans, yeah, they wanted knowledge, but they also wanted those trade routes, those spices, the wealth. So off they go, sailing the globe, and suddenly it's a whole new world of encounters, clashes of cultures.
And the video, it points out these new ship designs, the Carack, the Caravel. Without those, no way you're making those voyages. Longer, more ambitious. It's incredible when you think they were doing this with, a sextant and a prayer. The dangers were off the charts.
Yeah, and we have to be real about the consequences too, right? Yeah, this explosion of knowledge, global trade takes off, but it paves the way for colonialism, the exploitation of entire populations.
The video doesn't shy away from that. Mercantilism, that economic theory, it was all about a country's wealth equaling power, even if it meant exploiting colonies to get there.
It's a dark side of humanity, no doubt, but essential to learn from. It still shapes the world today, how power flows, who has it, that drive for wealth, resources. It's a constant in our story.
From those ancient trade routes to, everything we're dealing with today, globalizations, like this search for more. But alongside that, we also see new ideas taking root, new ways of seeing the world.
And that takes us to the Enlightenment. This was a time when reason was everything. Individual liberty, questioning authority, it was radical.
Europe, it's like they went through a second Renaissance, but this time it was all about the power of ideas. Thinkers like John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, they weren't just debating, they were challenging the very foundations of power.
And those ideas, they didn't just stay in some ivory tower either. They sparked revolutions. The American colonies, the streets of Paris, people were listening.
The American Revolution, it's inspiring. In a way, right?
Yeah.
Colonists, ordinary people standing up to an empire, they risked it all for their ideals, liberty, self-government, even the most powerful empires, they can fall.
It shows you what happens when people believe in something enough to fight for it, even if it means, everything. But the video, it makes a point. Revolutions, they're messy. The French Revolution, yeah, it led to lasting change, but it was chaotic, violent. There's a cost.
It's that reminder, right? It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of revolution, but real change, lasting change, it's slow and it's rarely bloodless, unfortunately. It's a tightrope walk, isn't it? Trying to move forward without, tripping over our own feet. And speaking of moving forward, the 18th century, it wasn't just ideas and revolutions. You get this whole other kind of revolution going on.
Yeah.
The Industrial Revolution.
Powered by coal, steam engines chugging away. It's like hitting fast forward on how societies worked. And I don't just mean new gadgets. It's a whole different way of life. Cities, they're exploding with people, factory workers, the rhythm of life. It's the machine now.
It's hard to even picture that kind of upheaval, people leaving their villages, these factory towns popping up, your whole world timed by the clock, the shift. It wasn't just tools that changed. It's like what it meant to be human was up for grabs.
And like those revolutions before it, the Industrial Revolution, it had its dark side, no two ways about it. The video, it doesn't sugarcoat it. Factory work, it could be brutal. Exploitation, the gap between the rich and the poor, it widens.
A good reminder that progress, It often comes with a cost. And then boom, the 20th century hits. It feels like everything's speeding up even more. New ideologies, global conflicts on a scale never seen before, and technology. It's like something out of science fiction.
20th century, it's a time of extremes, that's for sure. On one hand, you have unimaginable destruction. 2 world wars, the atomic bomb, it's terrifying. But then on the other hand, you've got incredible breakthroughs in medicine, science, the digital age is born, it's dizzying.
It's almost impossible to hold those two things in your head at the same time.
Right.
That capacity for both incredible good and just horror. And all through the 20th century, the video, it highlights this push and pull, progress, conflict, innovation, and then the potential for it all to go terribly wrong.
And that tension, honestly, it's what we're living with today, isn't it? 21st century, we've got climate change, inequality, now AI's on the scene, big complex issues.
It really makes you wonder, for all our progress, are we that different from those first humans huddled around a fire? Are we still motivated by the same things deep down, those basic instincts, those desires that got us here?
That's the million-dollar question the video leaves us with. Have we learned from our past? Or are we just going to keep making the same mistakes over and over?
It's something to think about, for sure. Do you think we've broken free from that cycle? Or are we still searching for the same answers? About who we are, where we're headed, what it means to be human, all those big questions.
I think it's a journey, and we're all on it together, figuring it out as we go.
And that's the beauty of history, isn't it? It's not just dates and names in a textbook. It's like a mirror. It shows us ourselves, all our flaws, our triumphs, and maybe, just maybe, it gives us a glimpse of what might be possible if we're brave enough to learn from it. So yeah, keep asking those questions, keep exploring, keep diving deep into the past. Who knows? You might just find something amazing.